Her wedding day was supposed to be perfect, but one shocking moment turned it into a nightmare. How far would you go to reclaim your strength and dignity? Stay with us to uncover Tanisha's journey from betrayal to triumph. The morning sun streamed through the lace curtains of the bridal suite, bathing the room in a soft, golden glow. Tanisha stood before a full-length mirror, adjusting the flowing folds of her wedding dress. The ivory fabric hugged her curves perfectly, shimmering with the subtle glint of hand-sewn beads. She tilted her head slightly, examining the way her veil fell against her shoulders. It was everything she'd dreamed of, yet her chest felt heavy, as if the beauty of the day was weighed down by an invisible shadow. "Girl, you look like a goddess," her best friend Jada said, stepping back to admire her. "If this man even thinks about hesitating at the altar, I'll drag him there myself." Tanisha let out a small laugh, though it felt hollow. Jada's playful banter usually worked wonders on her nerves, but today it barely scratched the surface. Her heart was pounding, and she couldn't shake the nagging sense of unease that had followed her from the rehearsal dinner the night before. Her fiancé, Jaden, had seemed tense, distracted even, and his mother, Marion, hadn't bothered to hide her disdain for Tanisha's family or the choices she'd made for the ceremony. Jada's voice broke through her thoughts. "Hey, what's going on? You've been staring at that mirror for a solid 5 minutes. Cold feet?" "No," Tanisha said quickly. "Not cold feet, She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I want everything to be perfect. This day has to be perfect." Jada gave her a knowing look, one eyebrow raised. "Is this about Jaden's mom? Because if she tries anything today, I swear—" "Don't," Tanisha interrupted, raising a hand. "It's not worth it. She's just old-fashioned. Jaden says she'll come around eventually." "Old-fashioned is one way to put it," Jada muttered under her breath. "Rude is another." Tanisha smiled faintly but didn't respond. Instead, she smoothed her hands over her dress, letting the texture of the fabric ground her. The truth was, Marion's hostility was only part of what was bothering her. She'd caught Jaden whispering with his PR agent during the rehearsal, and though she hadn't heard the details, she couldn't shake the feeling that their wedding was less about love and more about optics. He'd always been so driven, so focused on his career, and she couldn't ignore the way his eyes lit up whenever he talked about the benefits of their union. It was hard not to wonder if she was part of his plan, a calculated step in his climb to the top. A sharp knock at the door startled her. Jada moved to answer it, revealing Jaden himself standing in the doorway. His tailored tuxedo fit him perfectly, and his smile was the kind that had made her fall for him in the first place. But there was tension in his jaw, a stiffness in his posture that made her stomach tighten. "Can I talk to you for a second?" he asked, glancing past Jada to meet Tanisha's eyes. Jada crossed her arms. "You know it's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding, right?" Jaden gave a tight laugh. "I think we'll survive. Just a minute, I promise." Reluctantly, Jada stepped aside, muttering something about superstitions under her breath as she left the room. Jaden closed the door behind her, then turned back to Tanisha. For a moment, he didn't say anything, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. "You look incredible," he said finally, "like really stunning." "Thank you," she replied softly, though the compliment didn't quite reach her heart. "What's wrong?" He hesitated, running a hand through his neatly styled hair. "It's my mom. She's concerned about the jump in the broom thing." Tanisha felt her chest tighten. "Concerned?" she repeated. "It's a tradition, Jaden. It's important to me." "I know," he said quickly, "and I get that. I do. but she thinks it might not fit the vibe of the ceremony. You know how she is about appearances." Anger flared in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. "So, what are you saying? That we should just cut it because it makes her uncomfortable?" "I'm saying we can find other ways to honor your culture," he said, his tone placating. "Ways that don't stand out so much." The words hit her like a slap. She'd spent months carefully planning this ceremony, making sure it reflected both of their heritages. And now, hours before the wedding, he was asking her to erase a piece of herself to appease his mother. "I see," she said quietly, turning back to the mirror. "Tanisha, come on," he said, stepping closer. "It's just one thing. Don't let it ruin the day." She didn't respond, didn't trust herself to speak without her voice breaking. After a moment, he sighed and kissed her lightly on the cheek. "You'll be amazing out there," he said. "I'll see you at the altar." When the door closed behind him, Tanisha let out a shaky breath. Her hands were trembling, and the weight of her dress felt suffocating. Jada was back in an instant, her eyes narrowing as she took in Tanisha's expression. "What did he say?" Tanisha shook her head. "Nothing, it's fine." But it wasn't fine, not even close. The ceremony itself was beautiful, at least on the surface. The sun was shining, the flowers were in full bloom, and the soft strains of a string quartet filled the air. But Tanisha couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something she didn't fully understand. As she made her way down the aisle, she noticed the way some of Jaden's relatives avoided meeting her gaze. She heard the whispers, saw the subtle glances exchanged between them. When she reached the altar, Jaden smiled at her, but his grip on her hands felt almost mechanical. The vows were short and sweet, rehearsed to perfection. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to their union, Tanisha felt her heart skip a beat, half expecting Marion to stand up. But no one spoke, and the ceremony continued without a hitch, except for the part where the broom, conspicuously absent, was never mentioned. After the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Jaden leaned in to kiss her. The crowd erupted in applause, and for a brief moment, Tanisha allowed herself to believe that everything was going to be okay. But as they turned to face their guests, her eyes caught Marion's. The older woman was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. Tanisha felt a chill run down her spine. This was only the beginning. The reception hall was a dazzling spectacle, its grandeur almost blinding. Chandeliers cast golden light over tables adorned with pristine white linens and centerpieces bursting with roses and hydrangeas. The air buzzed with laughter and conversation as waiters weaved through the crowd, balancing trays of champagne flutes. Tanisha stood near the entrance, smiling tightly as guests approached her to offer their congratulations. But beneath the surface, her mind was a whirlwind. Jaden had been glued to his phone since the ceremony ended. Every time she glanced at him, he was either checking messages or speaking in hushed tones with his PR agent, who had somehow been invited to the wedding. She couldn't shake the feeling that this day, her day, wasn't about their love at all. Her mother approached, her warm smile a balm to Tanisha's frayed nerves. "You okay, baby? You look tense." Tanisha forced a brighter smile. "I'm fine, Mama. Just a lot going on." Her mother's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't press the issue. Instead, she took Tanisha's hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. "You look beautiful. Don't let anything ruin this moment." Tanisha nodded, but the words felt hollow. She watched as her mother returned to her table, where her side of the family laughed and chatted animatedly. It was a stark contrast to the rigid demeanor of Jaden's relatives, who sat like statues, occasionally whispering to one another. Jaden's mother, Marion, held court at a table near the dance floor, her sharp eyes scanning the room like a queen surveying her kingdom. Every so often, her gaze would land on Tanisha, her expression unreadable but heavy with judgment. The DJ's voice boomed over the speakers, announcing the start of the first dance. Tanisha's heart sank when she realized Jaden wasn't by her side. She scanned the room and spotted him near the bar, engrossed in a conversation with his PR agent. She took a deep breath and walked over, the click of her heels drowned out by the music. "Jaden," she said, her voice low but firm, "it's time for our first dance." He looked up, startled, and then nodded. "Of course. Sorry about that." As they moved to the center of the dance floor, the room quieted and all eyes turned to them. The opening notes of their song began to play, and Jaden took her hand. For a moment, Tanisha allowed herself to relax, leaning into him as they swayed to the music. But as the dance continued, she couldn't ignore the stiffness in his movements, or the way his eyes darted to the crowd, as if he were performing for them rather than sharing an intimate moment with her. When the song ended, the room erupted in applause. Jaden stepped back, already pulling out his phone again. Tanisha's stomach churned, but she plastered on a smile and turned to thank their guests. As they returned to their table, Marion intercepted them. Her smile was saccharine, but her words were barbed. "Lovely dance, dear, though I couldn't help but notice your posture. A bit stiff, wasn't it?" Tanisha opened her mouth to respond, but Jaden cut her off. "Mom, let's not nitpick. It's her day." Marion raised an eyebrow but said nothing further. As she walked away, Tanisha felt a flare of anger. She turned to Jaden, her voice barely a whisper. "You let her talk to me like that?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "She didn't mean anything by it. Don't make a scene." Her anger simmered, but she swallowed it down. This wasn't the time or place. The night wore on, and Tanisha found herself growing more and more isolated. Jaden was constantly pulled away by his PR team, and Marion seemed intent on keeping Tanisha at arm's length from the rest of the family. Even when Tanisha tried to engage with his relatives, their responses were curt and dismissive. At one point, she overheard Marion speaking to a group of guests near the buffet table. "She's lovely, isn't she? Of course, Jaden's always had a heart for charity work. I suppose this is just another example." Tanisha's breath caught in her throat. Charity work? She felt a mix of humiliation and fury rise within her, but she forced herself to stay composed. She couldn't let Marion see her break. As she turned to walk away, she nearly bumped into Jada, who was holding a glass of wine and wearing an expression that could cut steel. "I heard her," Jada said flatly. "You want me to handle it?" "No," Tanisha said quickly. "It's not worth it." Jada gave her a long look. "You sure about that?" Tanisha nodded, though her hands were trembling. Just let it go. But the final straw came during the speeches. Marion took the microphone, her smile thin and her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I just want to say how proud I am of my son. Jaden has always been so generous, so willing to give back to those less fortunate. And now he's extending that generosity to his choice of bride." The room fell silent. Tanisha's chest tightened, and she felt all eyes on her. She glanced at Jaden, hoping for some kind of support, but he was staring at his plate, avoiding her gaze. When the speech ended, the applause was polite, but subdued. Tanisha excused herself and slipped out onto the balcony, the cool night air hitting her like a slap. She gripped the railing, her breath coming in shallow gasps. How had this day turned into such a nightmare? The door behind her opened, and she turned to see Jaden stepping out. "Tanisha, what are you doing out here?" She crossed her arms. "I needed a moment." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I know my mom can be difficult, but she didn't mean anything by it." "She called me a charity case, Jaden," Tanisha said, her voice trembling, "in front of everyone." "She was joking," he said, his tone dismissive. "Don't take it so seriously." She stared at him in disbelief and hurt warring within her. "You're really going to defend her after that?" "I'm not defending her," he said, exasperated. "I'm just saying you're blowing this out of proportion. Can we not do this right now? We still have guests to entertain." Tanisha felt something inside her break. Without another word, she turned and walked back into the hall, leaving him standing on the balcony. The breaking point came during the cake cutting. As they posed for photos, Marion made a pointed comment about how Tanisha's family hadn't contributed much to the wedding. Tanisha froze, the knife trembling in her hand. She looked at Jaden, hoping he would step in, but he simply laughed nervously and said, "Mom, maybe save that for later." The words hung in the air, and Tanisha realized in that moment that she was alone in this marriage. Jaden wasn't her partner. He was his mother's son, through and through. When the cake was cut and the guests began to mingle again, Tanisha pulled Jaden aside. "We need to talk." "Not now," he said, glancing at his phone. "I'm handling something." "No," she said firmly. "Now." He sighed and followed her to a quiet corner of the hall. "What is it?" "This," she said, gesturing around them. "Your mother's comments, your family's attitude, your constant phone calls. None of this feels like a wedding. It feels like a performance. And I'm starting to wonder if I'm just part of the act." His expression darkened. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" she challenged. "Because it sure doesn't feel ridiculous from where I'm standing." His jaw tightened and his voice dropped to a whisper. "You're being dramatic. You need to stop making a scene." Her voice shook with anger. "I'm not the one making a scene. Your mother humiliated me in front of everyone, and you just sat there." "That's enough," he snapped, his voice rising. "You're ruining this night." Before she could respond, he did something that froze the entire room. In a fit of frustration, he raised his hand and slapped her across the face. The hall went silent. Guests froze, their conversations cut off mid-sentence. The DJ stopped the music, and all eyes turned to them. Tanisha's cheek burned, both from the slap and the humiliation. She touched her face, her mind racing to process what had just happened. Jaden's face paled as he realized the weight of his actions. "Tanisha, But she didn't let him finish. She turned to the crowd, her voice steady despite the tears welling in her eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her tone cold and clear, "this wedding is over." Without another word, she walked out of the hall, leaving behind the man she thought she loved and the family that had tried to break her. The night air was sharp against Tanisha's tear-streaked cheeks as she burst through the doors of the reception hall. The faint sounds of shocked murmurs and music cutting back in reached her ears, but she didn't stop. Her heels clicked against the concrete as she made her way to the parking lot, her breath coming in uneven gasps. The weight of her wedding dress felt unbearable now, every layer of fabric pressing against her like a cruel reminder of the day's events. Behind her, she heard the heavy doors of the hall open again, followed by hurried footsteps. "Tanisha, wait!" Jada's voice rang out, cutting through the dark. Tanisha slowed but didn't turn around. She couldn't bear to see the pity in her best friend's eyes. Jada caught up to her, panting slightly. Girl, what just happened in there? Are you okay? Tanisha stopped and let out a shaky laugh, wiping at her face. Okay? I just got slapped by my husband on our wedding day, in front of everyone. Do I look okay? Jada didn't respond immediately, her face a mix of anger and concern. You're not going back in there, right? Not a chance, Tanisha said firmly. I'm done. With him, with his family, with all of it. Jada nodded. Good. Let's get you out of here. As they reached Tanisha's car, Jada opened the passenger door and gestured for her to get in. I'll drive. You shouldn't be behind the wheel right now. Tanisha hesitated but eventually slid into the seat, too emotionally drained to argue. As Jada started the car and pulled out of the lot, Tanisha glanced back at the venue through the rearview mirror. The building that had once seemed so grand and full of promise now looked cold and lifeless. Where to? Jada asked. Your place, Tanisha replied softly. I can't go back to the house, not tonight. Jada nodded, her grip tightening on the steering wheel. Good call, and for the record, you're staying as long as you need to. No arguments. Tanisha leaned her head against the window, the cool glass soothing her burning cheek. Thanks, Jada. The rest of the drive passed in silence except for the occasional buzz of Tanisha's phone. She didn't bother looking at it. She knew who it was, Jaden, his mother, maybe even some of the guests who had witnessed the disaster. She had no interest in hearing their excuses or explanations. When they arrived at Jada's apartment, Jada ushered her inside, guiding her to the couch and wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. You want tea? Wine? Something stronger? Tea, please, Tanisha said. Her voice felt small, like it belonged to someone else. As Jada busied herself in the kitchen, Tanisha stared at her phone, still buzzing with messages. Finally, she turned it off and set it on the coffee table. She couldn't deal with it now. She needed time to think, to process everything that had happened. When Jada returned with a steaming mug of tea, she sat beside Tanisha and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You're not alone in this, you know. Whatever you need, I'm here. Tanisha nodded, but the tears she had been holding back finally spilled over. I don't know what I'm going to do, she admitted. I thought today was going to be the start of something beautiful, but it was all a lie. Jada pulled her into a hug, letting her cry into her shoulder. You're stronger than this, Tanisha. You've always been stronger than this, and you're going to come out of it even stronger. The next morning, Tanisha woke up on Jada's couch, still wearing her wedding dress. The sunlight streaming through the window felt harsh, unforgiving. She sat up slowly, her body aching from the tension of the night before. Her face still stung where Jaden had hit her, and when she caught her reflection in the mirror above the fireplace, she winced at the faint redness on her cheek. Jada appeared from the kitchen, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Morning. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a bus, Tanisha muttered, taking the mug gratefully. Well, you're about to feel a little better, Jada said, sitting down beside her. I called your brother Mike. He's on his way over. We're going to get your stuff from the house. Tanisha's stomach churned at the thought. I don't want to see him, or his mother. You won't have to, Jada assured her. Mike's bringing the police. They'll make sure everything's handled. The thought of a police escort was both comforting and humiliating, but Tanisha knew she couldn't avoid it. Her wallet, Idaho, and most of her belongings were still at the house she was supposed to share with Jaden. By the time Mike arrived, Tanisha had changed into a pair of Jada's sweatpants and a t-shirt, her wedding dress folded neatly in a bag. Mike greeted her with a fierce hug, his expression dark with anger. You okay? I will be, she said, her voice steadier than she expected. The drive to the house was tense, the police cruiser following close behind. When they pulled into the driveway, Tanisha's heart raced. Jaden's car wasn't there, but his mother's was. As they approached the front door, Marion stepped outside, her face a mask of feigned concern. Tanisha, dear, you didn't have to bring the police, she said, her tone dripping with condescension. Jaden isn't even here. I'm not here for Jaden, Tanisha said coldly. I'm here for my things. Marion stepped aside reluctantly, but not before muttering something about overreacting. Tanisha ignored her and walked inside, flanked by Mike and one of the officers. She moved quickly, gathering her clothes, documents, and a few sentimental items. Jada followed close behind, photographing everything for documentation. When they reached the living room, Tanisha froze. A framed photo of her and Jaden sat on the mantel, taken during their first vacation together. She stared at it for a moment before picking it up and placing it face down. Marion appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed. You're being so dramatic, Tanisha. This isn't necessary. Tanisha turned to face her, her voice calm but firm. What's dramatic is your son hitting me in front of everyone. What's unnecessary is your constant meddling and disrespect. I'm done with all of it. Marion's face flushed, but she didn't respond. Tanisha finished packing and walked out of the house without looking back. Back at Jada's apartment, Tanisha collapsed onto the couch, feeling both exhausted and relieved. Mike sat beside her, his hand on her shoulder. You did the right thing, T. You're out of there, and you're safe. That's what matters. Tanisha nodded, though the weight of what she had lost still lingered. Her phone buzzed with a notification, and when she checked it, her stomach dropped. A video of the slap had been uploaded online, already gaining traction. Comments flooded in, some supportive, others cruel. Jada leaned over to look at the screen. Don't read those. People are going to have opinions no matter what. Focus on you. Tanisha turned off her phone again, setting it aside. She had more important things to worry about than public opinion. Over the next few days, Tanisha began the slow process of rebuilding. She met with a lawyer to discuss a restraining order and started looking for a new place to live. The outpouring of support from her family and friends was overwhelming, and it reminded her that she wasn't alone in this fight. One evening, as she sat on Jada's balcony, watching the sun set over the city, she opened a journal her mother had given her years ago. She hadn't written in it since college, but now felt like the right time. Today marks the end of a chapter I thought would define my life. Instead, it's the beginning of something new. I've learned that love isn't about sacrifice, it's about respect. And I'll never settle for anything less again. She closed the journal, a small smile forming on her lips. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. This wasn't the life she had planned, but it was hers to rebuild. And she was ready to start. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more captivating tales. Share this video with your friends and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Together, let's spread the message. See you in the next story.
I hope you enjoyed this thrilling journey. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story? Let me know in the comments below. Your feedback inspires more epic tales.